thank you so much for honoring this interview. We'll get straight away to business. We know you're here for the Public-Private Partnership Conference, which is going to take place tomorrow. And we know, Right Honorable Raila, you have this distinguished role at the African Union where you're trying to champion the cause in regard to infrastructure. What are you bringing on board tomorrow at this conference?
Well, thank you very much. I've been invited here in my capacity as the African Union High Representative for Infrastructure Development. In that capacity, I act like a trigger to ensure, to facilitate implementation of AU agenda in infrastructure development.
Public-private partnerships should be anchored on the principles of public interest, transparency, and accountability.
And private sector are very keen in terms of transparency and accountability in terms of management. So they will actually force the public sector to adopt those kind of systems of accountability in negotiations. But the public sector should have the capacity to be able to negotiate with the private sector terms which are beneficial to both, so that the public don't lose, the private sector doesn't lose.
We know you've talked about a lot of money in insurance, in pension funds that the PPPs can tap into. But we know as well that African countries are borrowing heavily, are mortgaging their resources to China to get loans, which is a kind of quick fix.
Nobody is forcing you to take this loan. You're taking it because you need it. China is always the elephant in the room. The question of China, or China is trying to recolonize Africa with these loans, or the quality of infrastructure that China is developing in Africa is poor, and so on. And I say all that is hogwash. China is doing in Africa what the West has for a long time refused to do. Okay? So China is through a vacuum, and they're filling that vacuum. The question that should be asked is Africa getting value for money?
You've just been meeting President Museveni. What did you discuss at State House in Tebe?
Well, we discussed a number of issues. As you know, President Museveni is an eminent leader in the region. And we were talking about, for example, East African unity. The East African unity was the dream of the founding fathers of our nations. I remember Mwalimu Nyerere who said that he was ready to delay the independence of Tanganyika so that Kenya and Uganda could get independence together and form a federation.
Is it because the political elite is window dressing the real issues that should remove obstacles so that we can have this federation? Why can't we have this federation? We've seen in the past countries coming up with all sorts of things, like the coalition of the willing. Is it because perhaps we don't have a harmonious political setting in all our countries? For instance, we don't have term limits in this country. Is that perhaps the obstacle?
No, I don't think that those internal issues should be obstacles. They say that whenever there is a will, there's always a way. I think that there's a will in some leaders and more than in others. And that's why my suggestion would be that those who are ready to go ahead should be allowed to move forward, then others will join. You see, the European Union, it was not created in one day. You know, they started first as an association, then they became the EC, first it became the EEC, European Economic Commission, then became European Commission, eventually became European Union.
My first question to you is, you run the Operation Wealth Creation. How can you tap into public-private partnerships to ensure that this benefits the citizens across the country?
Viewers, the Operation Wealth Creation, which you are much familiar with, which is commanded or coordinated by General Salim Saleh, whom I'm representing as his deputy, has a great opportunity to take advantage of this inaugural launch of the first PPP on the continent of Africa under those species of all the global players coming to Uganda. It's a great opportunity. Now for OWC, we're taking advantage of this PPP, which is a public-private partnership, because we stand on the foundation of the PPCP, meaning that for us as Operation Wealth Creation, we are people-centered, because the President gave us a directive to ensure that the 68% of our population who are outside man economy get into man economy.
This sounds quite elitist. How do we ensure that the man, the common man at the grassroots benefits from this?
It is possible for them to benefit from this, because our second phase is people-led. It is people, it is targeting the people, and is private-led, private sector-led. So coming together of private sector and our community, then it means that the community will now be able to negotiate better with the government supporting them.
The critics of the program, claim that, OWC is not a bad program, but it has a political agenda.
That's a very valid question. If you had the opportunity to read the standard operational procedure which the President signed, the only area that he wrote in bold, he said this has nothing to do with politics. We don't ask where your political affiliation is. We say Ugandans who are outside man economy. So for us, as you know, the military, we are not affiliated to any political side. We are subordinated to civilian authority, and for that matter, we look for any Ugandan who is outside man economy.